That's what we
wow.
said.
First game in the books. We've got about 5,000 of you on Twitch, 2,500 of you on YouTube. Sorry, chat hadn't given a shout out to all of you yet. Thanks for being with us. And okay, here we go. The first game is over. Wesley So on the board.
I don't know that, when I'm seeing moves that are slightly better than a guy who is definitely stronger than me, then I'm a little worried because he's supposed to see those. That was a technical end game. He might, and maybe his end game is his weakest phase. I don't really know to be able to talk like that. I mean, the guy, like I said, he's a young man, he's 16 years old, but he is definitely way stronger than I am. But, we OGs. We know a little bit about the end game.
That's right.
That
bit around the block.
A bit around the block. So we say, okay, this is how you're going to draw this one, young man. And the fact that he didn't play for that G5 idea concerns me because he's not going to beat Wesley tactically as far as I can tell. It's just not.
Interesting here, Nodirbek has played the Roy Lopez as backup equipment of the analysis board because I was curious whether we would see one of his sort of specialties. He has a variation of the Scotch that he's played more than a few times in some of our Grand Prix. And actually normally with the Bishop C4 quarter. We'll see if that appears later on. Here we have a Berlin offer, sort of a Berlin decline, right? White doesn't go to the main lines, every one of castles and all the big trades we see in the center.
Oh, please don't.
And now we're in some traditional kind of anti-Berlin Spanish theory here.
This is the best White can get. The problem is the structure is not balanced enough. And that's a real challenge for White. Because Black can trade so easily. Look at the pawn structure. Black does have an issue with double pawns, but these double pawns are just perfectly fine. And that pawn on C6 is guarding critical squares, D5 and D5, and the pawn on C7 is guarding critical squares as well. So these are healthy, happy pawns for defense. White has a 4 against 3 on the other side, but the more these pieces trade down, the less you're going to have any real edge. And look at this, pawn takes, trying to imbalance the pawn structure. He knew that if he kept the position going the way it was, that there was no way he was going to get it in. So he said, let's go. Let's switch this pawn structure around. And he's looking for the move F5. Now, will Wesley himself play F5? Is that reasonable? Because
instead he tries to get the queens off, but this almost looks a little bit like the dynamics you see in some of the mainline Petrovs these days, with both sides castle on opposite sides, except a lot of minor pieces off the board. And if Black trades queens, probably doesn't have anything to worry about in regards to the attack.
No trades. No thing.
Yeah, I would keep on the board.
I like Queen G3. What's wrong with Queen G3 threatening F5 and potentially F6? Wesley must have something planned against this.
Maybe then it's your F5 move.
That F5 move is thematic to this pawn structure. So you've got to watch out that knight on E6 will be an ox if a pawn sits on F5. And I think that's his biggest worry. He did play Queen G3, but I am concerned. And Wesley has played this move F5. It's on the board. This is usually a structure where Black can just sit. By the way, Black is threatening to take on E4 right now.
Yep.
So F4 will become weak. And the main point is if you play E5, how do you ever, and I mean ever, drive the knight away from E6? Like ever. In the history of time, you will not get this knight off the square. This is a super solid position. I think now the youngster is not too thrilled that he's going to try to keep the balance. He played rook to E1. Might as well keep it sharp. Hope that this works out.
Yeah, this move rook E1, I like he's maintaining the tension. He wants to keep it tricky, but I'm with you that Wesley is getting unbalanced where this could quickly become a position where White thought he was attacking and it turns around and in fact he's positionally busted at the end.
Wesley's not even looking at the board. I mean, you saw Wesley kind of glance off. And Wesley's chilling. Wesley's chilling. He's back to focusing on the screen, but this is not good. This is not look. If I had the white pieces, I'd be trying to bail. I would not be happy. I'd like for my pawn on F2 to be on G2, please. Would you do me a favor and fix my pawn structure? This is not looking good. He's at a trade-off. What to do now as Wesley's position is hyper solid. You know what the main problem is in this position? The knight on C3.
Yeah.
The knight on C3.
Might have to play a move like 3, I mean, just to maintain the fact that at least I won't have the double pawn. No. Okay, another way to possibly do that if he says if you take, I wonder if White's intending to just take with the pawn to defend F4, and then you fix your double pawns. So
it's a defensive move. It's a reasonable move. Give him credit for keeping the game alive. What should Wesley do now? I gotta say, I don't see anything to really amp up the pressure if I am black. This last move was very solid. Try to correct all that ails.
You have to be a little careful if you're Wesley, because one threat, if we bring up the analysis board, is actually to take f5, meaning you can't just sit on the position now. White will take, and then on the queen trade, take with the pawn. Okay, so Wesley indeed does decide to break the tension. The staring contest is over between the pawns.
Usually the person who loses the staring contest is the worst for it.
Yeah,
so
conceding, yeah.
This is something that you want, because now look at White. White is thinking about multiple ways to take a b4 square. Which one actually does the deal? I'm surprised he hasn't played queen takes, but he recognized that the endgame is a potential bailout, even though he has his weak pawn on f4. I personally wouldn't want to see the endgame as a tendency as a player.
Yep.
And queen takes with b4 played, keeping some dynamism. And now that one secure knight on e6, Danny, it's a little bit of an issue. It's a little bit of an issue.
Didn't become close like we were talking about, so now Wesley has to deal with the obvious threat. I guess if you just head back to f8, the position is still pretty close to equal, and kind of the same dynamic. Will White get counterplay with the queens on the board, or will he miss up and end up in just a lost endgame?
I was going to say, he does not want to go back to f8. That is not what he wanted to do. He wanted to justify his knight staying active, and so he's put his knight on a great square here. He might even drop it back to f5 as needed, but he had to really check the danger associated with rook to d1. That was the key, whether or not rook d1 was something special. He decided that it wasn't, that it was okay, that it was not going to hurt him.
I wonder if d1 was better. I mean, that would have been, at least from a practical perspective, a very dangerous thing. So instead, Nodirbek offers the queen trade.
And this looks reasonable. This looks reasonable as well. Maybe you might have to play a boring queen d6. Again, not a move you really want to play. He's instead trick. Whoa! I would not have guessed ultra passivity.
Yeah,
is this what just happened?
At least right now, the one fighting for the draw, but it's an interesting dynamic again, because if White's pressure missiles, positionally, White is still just, dealing with some ugly ducklings over here. So the question is, does Nodirbek have an idea? I mean, is the knight coming in?
94, knight g5. I mean, what do you mean? It's very straightforward to try to put the knight to the e6 square. Knight e4 down. The knight can also hit upon c5 in the right position.
Right.
The problem for him right now that he's considering is whether or not he might lose this pawn. See, the knight e4 is meant by knight e2 check and knight takes on f4. This is the problem, right? So if he drops that, does he have enough play? And he's decided not to bother with that pawn, but in this position, he's sacking the h pawn for activity. The knight f3 check and then takes is playable. Oh, no, it's not. The problem is f3. The problem is f3 would have shut him down. F3 would have been there. It was nasty. The knight would have been trapped. So he cannot. This is a nuance fun. He cannot go after it. But now king to e8 is indeed threatened. Here comes Wesley with king to e8. And that rook will have to back up. So he's played
The key
first.
point, yeah, the knight guard g7. Another key point, we're so focused on the chess, is that Nodirbek, again, down on the clock big time, right? So regardless of the technique, you may not have enough time to convert here. If you're White, you got to speed up.
He's in desperation mode now. All that time to try to figure out equality, and Wesley has now planted a knight on a hyper secure square d6. He will never chase this knight over this square. Knights like stable squares. That's it. That's it. Now Wesley can play around. He can bring his king up, move his rook over, start gang tackling your pawn on f4. Notice he just played that c5 move to get maximum security, shutting down all play on the queen side. I think a little bit too careful, maybe. Scratch that. He's going to remove.
I love that idea. Yeah,
that side,
a4 so
open
nice.
up the a file.
Wow.
And now the knight is just dancing and prancing. Look at that knight. He's going to crack over the a file. This is all black people. Black. Again, what did I say about the endgame technique? You gotta have it at this level. And we're seeing another endgame on the board. Wesley outplaying the youngster, and that knight on that square looks nasty. A direct threat of check. White, where is White's counterplay? He does not want to have to defend this position, but it looks like that's all he's going to be able to do. I like rook a3, forcing rook b2, followed by rook a1. Wesley like rook a1 immediately. You're not even sure what Black's threatening, Danny. Black could be threatening anything. You're just scared.
All the cards here, right? No, it's super. And now you could even raid and go after the ace, but no, probably not. No, keep the rooks on the board.
Wesley's not calculating the problem. Let's go see the B4. Because of his last sequence, B4 will give a little bit of play to White as White opens up the game and tries to establish a weakness on the C5 square. You see, he didn't want to see that much. And that's why he played the way he did, but he calculated this, thinking that maybe he has something, but now that I'm looking at it, White just might have enough. Look at that.
Timing. Check, and now he's going to back up as soon as the king retreats and ask Wesley how he's going to win. But still, only 5 seconds. So all Wesley has to do is give him at least one problem to solve, and will he do it with the amount of time he has?
I play C6 right now, if I were Wesley. Just make
sit
him out.
pretty. I like that one.
Just they can wonder what's going on. Wesley has a lot of time on the clock. Wesley's looking for concrete moves though. Knight F3 is also quite attractive. But that King B5, I don't want to see any of it. Wesley has decided that it's worth going for it. Again, this King B5 concerns me. As White is now back in business. Wesley
I wonder if he'll just come right back here and up. Okay, no, he's going to allow this idea of King B5. Here he goes.
Yeah, now C5 is a threat. And I'm not sure Black is doing anything. And I know G3 is doing yeoman's work.
In 4 seconds, the Nodirbek is holding despite that, living off the increment here. And
but not that hard. 5. And here we go. F3.
So he's at 36, so the knight's going to burn up there. G5 prevented.
Oh, but now White is looking for knight to E4. And knight to E4 is progress. Why not White? Here he goes. He's taking knight back, and now E5. Oh, E5 looks forced.
3 seconds for H5 to stay in knight D5 check.
Very much like nature suddenly.
Yeah.
Because of the extra pawn. And he's just dancing around. Wesley with only 15 seconds himself though. Only at 15 seconds he's got to figure this position out. And it's not easy at all. And here, White has dropped another pawn. You can give him at 4 in this position. But Wesley with only 11 seconds. Wesley has to start running. And he can go for it because the knight will not be able to stop both pawns. The H pawn and the C pawn. And that pawn on the F5 is not going anywhere because of the sack, knight check. And there goes Wesley, knowing full well that he can play 96 right now and stop the pawn from going. Oh, he stole that one. Wesley stole that one.
Let's